What if I told you that behind Alabama Crimson Tide's perfect game day image, there's a storm no one dares to talk about? In the next few minutes, you're about to uncover the whispers from inside the locker room, the quiet battles that shaped this team's fate, and the unfiltered truth that never made it to press conferences. This is not another recap. This is the season's most guarded storyline. And if you think you know Alabama football, brace yourself, because you're about to see a side that could rewrite the playbook. Now listen, our mission with this video is bigger than just views. Together, we're aiming to break every record we've ever had, the highest views possible, and at least 500 new subscribers this week alone. If we hit this goal, we'll drop an exclusive deep dive video revealing truths and behind-the-scenes moments no one outside the Tide's inner circle has ever seen. That's a promise. So here's the deal. Subscribe right now and watch this until the very end. Why? Because when you subscribe and actually watch the full video, YouTube remembers you. It puts you first in line for our next uploads, ahead of those who didn't. It's how you stay ahead, how you get the unfiltered stories before anyone else. Even if you're busy, let it play in the background. That's how we hit this goal together. And when we do, we all win. We've spent days analyzing footage, connecting insider transcripts and digging into off-the-record conversations to bring you a complete picture you can't find anywhere else. This is built from 18 different insider videos, connected with fresh intel from training camps, recruiting moves, and performance reviews. Every detail you're about to hear has been cross-checked, layered with exclusive angles, and tied into a bigger story arc that could shock even the most die-hard Bama fans. And here's your first warning. The biggest twist in this entire story is waiting for you at the very end. The kind of reveal that makes you rethink everything you thought you knew about this season. So buckle up, because once we start, there's no going back. What happens when the team that defines dominance finds itself cornered, not by an opponent, but by its own reflection? That night in Tuscaloosa began like any other, the crowd roaring, the lights burning holes into the night sky, the script already written in the minds of thousands. But then, something broke. A missed read, a botched route, a silence that cut sharper than any tackle. The sidelines weren't just tense, they were fractured. Players avoided eye contact, coaches barked without conviction. Somewhere in the chaos, Ryan Williams' eyes locked on the scoreboard, as if staring at a dare he couldn't afford to lose. But was it the game slipping away, or something deeper? Inside the locker room, the air was thick enough to choke on. The smell of sweat and turf mixed with the kind of fear that only comes when legends realize they're bleeding. Ryan's words, barely louder than a whisper at first, cut through the noise. Never again. It wasn't just a rallying cry, it was an accusation. A finger pointed inward. Ty Simpson, still just fighting for his place, sat silent, replaying every mistake in his head. This wasn't about stats anymore, it was about identity. Who they were when no one was watching. But could pride alone fix what was cracking? As the second half began, something shifted, not in the score, but in the way they moved. Roots sharpened, hits landed harder, and every sideline glance burned with unspoken resolve. It was still messy, still uncertain, but the tide in their chests had turned. This was no longer about winning the game, it was about proving they weren't broken. And yet, somewhere beneath the adrenaline, a darker question lingered. If this was the night pride was tested, what would happen the day it failed? It started as a whisper in the locker room and spread like wildfire across every huddle, every drill, every set of eyes staring down the field. Never again wasn't just a slogan. It was a vow carved into the soul of Alabama Crimson Tide after the humiliation no one wanted to speak of. The phrase seeped into every corner of training, turning routine practices into battles of will. coaches stopped asking for effort. They demanded sacrifice. And in the middle of it all, Ryan Williams became more than just a receiver. He became the embodiment of the promise, carrying the weight of the vow on every snap. But how far could that kind of fire burn before it consumed everything? Stories began leaking about a series of closed-door practices, sessions so intense they felt more like war games than football drills. No cameras, no fans, just the team and an army of phantom rivals in borrowed jerseys, recreating the exact scenarios that had broken them before. Ty Simpson was pushed until his voice cracked from calling plays, until his legs felt like lead, and yet the coaches kept demanding more. Sweat mixed with turf burns and bruises no one would talk about publicly. This wasn't about strategy. It was about rewriting muscle memory, about making sure failure didn't just hurt. It became unthinkable. But was this new culture building resilience? Or was it breeding something darker? By the end of that month, you could see it in their eyes. A cold, razor-sharp focus that felt almost unnatural. They no longer celebrated small victories in practice. They dissected them, looking for flaws to erase. For fans, this was the sign of a team ready to dominate. For those inside, it was something different. The understanding that they had traded comfort for constant combat. And somewhere in the shadows, the question lingered: when vengeance becomes the foundation, what happens when there's no one left to punish? Ty Simpson didn't walk into the starting role with fanfare. He walked into it through fire. For months, the quarterback position at Alabama Crimson Tide had been a battlefield, with every throw, every snap, and every huddle feeling like a referendum on who should lead the offense. Simpson's arm was sharp, his reads improving, but what set him apart wasn't something you could measure on tape. It was the way he absorbed pressure, the kind that crushes most players, and turned it into fuel. Yet behind the official announcement, whispers swirled that not everyone in the building agreed he was the clear choice. Was this a united front, or just the appearance of one? The truth was, Simpson's rise wasn't a clean climb. In one scrimmage that insiders still talk about, he threw a pair of interceptions in the first quarter and took a brutal sack that left him staring at the turf for longer than he should have. But instead of crumbling, he came back with a series of drives that had even his critics nodding in reluctant approval. Coaches saw it, teammates felt it. The moment when a quarterback stops trying to win the job and starts acting like it's already his. That day, in the middle of the sweat, shouts, and sideline chaos, Ty Simpson stopped auditioning and started leading. Even then, the decision came with tension. Austin Mack's deep ball was still the stuff of highlight reels, and Keelan Russell's mobility added a dangerous wrinkle to the offense. Some in the locker room believed the QB1 spot should have gone to one of them. But when the dust settled, and Kalen DeBoer put his stamp on the choice, the message was clear. This wasn't just about talent. It was about trust, about who could stand in the center of a storm and not blink. Ty Simpson had become that man. But with the weight of the Tide's season on his shoulders, the real question was whether he could stay that man when the storm turned violent. They arrived in Tuscaloosa with the kind of hype most recruits can only dream of, and the kind of expectations that can crush a young player before his first snap. Xavier Griffin, Jireh Edwards, Ezavier Crowell, 3 names already stamped as preseason All-Americans before they'd even set foot in an official Crimson Tide game. For fans, it was a sign the dynasty was alive and well. For the veterans in the locker room, it was a reminder that the spotlight burns brightest and hottest on the newest faces. Some whispered that they were ready to dominate from day one. Others wondered if the weight of the Alabama standard would break them before it made them. From the first practices, it was clear these weren't just talented kids. They were forces of nature. Griffin's cuts left defenders reaching for air. Edwards moved with a calm precision beyond his years, and Crowell's presence at linebacker felt like a storm rolling in. But talent alone doesn't survive in this program. Every rep, every meeting, every second in the weight room was a test of more than just skill. It was a test of will. Coaches pushed them harder, veterans tested them in ways the cameras would never see. The question wasn't whether they had ability, it was whether they could carry the burden of wearing the A on their chest when the stakes were highest. Behind closed doors, some of the older players admitted an uncomfortable truth. As good as these rookies were, their inexperience could cost games in the wrong moments. The preseason accolades were nice, but in Alabama, those mean nothing if you don't deliver in the playoff push. And yet, as the season opener drew closer, something shifted. The three rookies started showing not just flashes, but consistency, the kind that changes games. Still, the unspoken challenge remained. Would they become the next legends of Tuscaloosa, or just another chapter in the long list of what could have been? In Alabama, the running game isn't just an option, it's an identity. But for the first time in years, that identity felt fragile. Jam Miller, the leader of the pack, had managed just 668 yards the previous season, a number that, by Crimson Tide standards, whispered of vulnerability. Daniel Hill brought raw power, Richard Young had bursts of speed, and transfer Dre Washington offered versatility. On paper, it was enough. But paper doesn't win games, and deep inside the Tide's camp, there was a gnawing sense that the ground attack no longer struck fear into opponents. What happens to a dynasty when its hammer loses its weight? The warning came early in the season, in a game that should have been a routine win. By halftime, Alabama's rushing yards barely scraped double digits. The opposing defense didn't just stop the run, they mocked it, stacking the box and daring Ty Simpson to beat them through the air. And while Simpson rose to the challenge, the sidelines told a different story. Running backs pacing, helmets in hand, exchanging glances that said more than words ever could. When the final whistle blew and Alabama escaped with a narrow victory, the celebration was muted. They had won the game, but the weakness was now public knowledge. In the days that followed, practices took on a desperate edge. Running backs were drilled until their legs gave out, linemen pushed to exhaustion, every snap of every drill carrying the weight of redemption. Yet there was a lingering question no amount of training could erase. Was this a temporary slump, or the beginning of a slow unraveling? In Tuscaloosa, strength had always been enough. But as the season stretched ahead, the Tide was learning a hard truth. In this game, power without precision is just wasted energy. The final stretch of the season wasn't just a schedule, it was a gauntlet. The Alabama Crimson Tide had survived every trial thrown their way. But as the last games approached, the air around Tuscaloosa grew heavier. Every snap in practice was sharper, every meeting more urgent. Players moved like soldiers preparing for a mission they couldn't afford to fail. And somewhere in that intensity there was a secret, a hidden strategy known only to the inner circle, referred to in whispers as the break glass moment. It was a plan so bold, so dangerous, that it would only be revealed if the season hung by a thread. For the veterans, this was more than football. Ryan Williams had carried the pain of earlier defeats like a stone in his chest, and now he ran every route as if it could be his last. Ty Simpson, once questioned as the right man for QB1, had grown into the voice of the huddle, steady, clear, unshakable. The rookies who entered the season with headlines and accolades were now hardened competitors, their confidence born not from praise, but from survival. Yet everyone knew the storm ahead would demand more than skill. It would demand heart. Game day came with a tension that could be felt in every breath. The crowd was electric, their cheers masking an undercurrent of anxiety. The first quarters were a slugfest, Alabama and their rivals trading blows, neither side giving an inch. Then came the moment. The sideline shifted, eyes locked, and the signal was given. The break glass moment was in play. The formation was unlike anything seen all season, a combination of speed, misdirection, and raw aggression. In a single drive, the game's momentum snapped in Alabama's favor. The crowd erupted, but on the field, the players didn't celebrate. Not yet. They knew the storm wasn't over. When the final whistle blew, the scoreboard told one story, victory, but the faces told another, relief, pride, exhaustion, and something deeper, the knowledge that they had faced the storm together and refused to break. In that moment, the Alabama Crimson Tide wasn't just a football team. They were a lesson in resilience, unity, and the power of refusing to let the past define the future. And that's where the real story lives. It's in the way Ryan Williams refused to accept defeat as an identity, in the way Ty Simpson grew into the leader no one could ignore, in the way rookies like Xavier Griffin, Jireh Edwards, and Ezavier Crowell learned that hype means nothing without grit. It's in the truth that strength isn't just about muscle or speed. It's about getting back up when the world expects you to stay down. If there's one thing you take away from this season, let it be this: greatness isn't given. It's built in the moments when no one's watching, in the decisions that cost you comfort but give you purpose. Alabama didn't just play football this year. They wrote a blueprint for facing life's storms head-on, and maybe that's why so many of us see ourselves in their fight. Because we've all faced storms. We've all had to choose between giving in or standing tall. I want to thank you for staying with us through this entire journey. If you've watched all the way to the end, you're part of a community that believes in more than just scores and stats. You believe in the heart behind the game. If you want to help us keep bringing you these stories, I've left a link in the pinned comment for our exclusive ebook about the Alabama Crimson Tide. If it makes sense for you, picking up a copy not only gives you deeper insight into the team you love, it directly supports the growth of this channel. Every view, every subscription, every share, it all matters. And if we keep building together, there's no limit to the stories we can tell. So from the bottom of my heart, thank you. Let's keep walking through storms together, because on the other side, the glory is always worth it.